Hello, hello, chunky monkeys. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your host, Brian McWilliams, here giving you bald and beautiful analysis of the world that we live in. It's interesting today because I have a couple of things I want to talk about. Number one is Cuba and the Democratic Socialists. I think of America, of Britain, all, the world over, Democratic Socialists descending on Cuba and really giving us the perfect encapsulation of champagne socialism. So we'll talk about that today. We're also going to talk about breaking news, which is that Stephen Colbert, known vax dancing, boner haver, is signed on to create a new Lord of the Rings sequel. So we'll get into that news. Also want to talk a little bit about a new study that found that women were not being represented at the rate that some Hollywood people would like. And we'll talk a little bit about the 82nd Airborne, which is, of course, the very famous parachute brigade, the Airborne Brigade, which has been deployed in very notable interactions in the past, including D-Day in Normandy, and how they are now being deployed in Iran. But before we get to all that, guys, I do want to remind you, Woke Word Wars, buy my game. You can get it on Amazon. It is fun. It is fantastic. It is not just for people on the right. In fact, it's funny because most of the people that are playing that are on the far left are enjoying this game just as much. So we're kind of doing a rejiggering of how we're marketing the game and re-rolling it out. But check it out, Woke Word Wars. And of course, guys, if you want to support the show, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe to all of our beautiful shows here on the Lions of Liberty Network, politics included, and we'll give you kisses and hugs. All right, so let's get into it. First and foremost, the Democratic Socialists descended on Cuba. Of course, they were met with all of the finery that the Cuban communists could muster, despite the fact that the island is actually without power, has been without power due to a blockade. Now, I talked about this last episode, the blockade that has been put into place. And yes, of course, I am not for putting blockades in place to stop people from getting, very valuable energy, oil barrels, etc. At last talk, and I don't know, I haven't heard an update on this yet, probably because the ships haven't arrived. At last, we talked about this. Russia was sending a ship full of oil, as was a ship coming out of Hong Kong set for Cuba. TBD, what happens when they actually arrive, if they're stopped or attempted to be stopped by the United States military and Navy, or whether they will be permitted to go through to avoid an international incident. But regardless, you had the island of Cuba plunged into darkness, wherein hospitals did not have power, wherein people were starving in the streets, wherein you had a legitimate catastrophe going on and riots going on against the communist government, which of course has mismanaged that island. All of the propaganda coming out of it that these Democrats just scoop up with a spoon and eat like the pigs at the trough that they are is nonsense. Cuba's vaunted healthcare is nonsense. They went and basically went to say, we're going to go as Democratic Socialists. We're going to go and support you as freedom fighters, right? We're fighting for the people of Cuba, even though the people of Cuba do not want to live under a communist regime. We see this because all the people of Cuba keep fleeing to the United States, then talking about what a nightmare it is to live in Cuba. Yet these hypocritical shitboxes fly down there. They are met with luxury accommodations. Of course, they're riding tour buses around, taking pictures of the poor, impoverished Cubans like animals in a zoo. They will, of course, blame the United States, not the government of Cuba. But they're out there literally touring this wasteland, painting murals, right? That was their big contribution after all this. Not to deliver food, not to deliver aid. No. They're literally painting, love murals, which is the most idiotically leftist thing I've ever heard in my life. These shallow gestures that mean absolutely nothing, except to them, they can be like, yeah, we painted a mural. We took a selfie of it. My God, here's my mural I painted in Cuba. It's going to last forever. No, it's not. It's not going to last the rest of the day. I guarantee you people were smearing their feces and piss all over that mural that you jerk-offs painted because it meant nothing, means nothing other than a shallow, self-congratulatory, masturbatory wank, which is all this trip was. But the real culmination of these Democratic Socialists, these champagne socialists descending on Cuba, was a concert which Irish rap band took part in and headlined. Now, this took place at a luxury hotel, which, of course, had security, had generators, had power, and took power, if reports are to be believed, took power away from places like hospitals, leading to the deaths of many people on ventilators. Now, I can't confirm that, and frankly, as with much propaganda, I don't necessarily believe that, because if they were already, the hospitals should have their own generators. The question is whether or not those generators were moved to the hotel in order to give these Democratic Socialists the times of their lives. But you saw a video coming out of this. You've got all these people partying it up in luxury. We saw pictures of the hotel, beautiful, decked out, one of the few places in Cuba that's not a shithole. And yet these people are having the time of their lives as all those around them are struggling to survive. But they're there to tell the people of Cuba that they're fighting for their freedom. Taking a vacation is not fighting for freedom. And honestly, the Irish band Kneecap, I know they're a bunch of leftists, but I did watch a documentary. I don't know, not a documentary. It was like a biopic where they were in it. It featured the hottest Irish girl I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll tell you that hands down. But it was an interesting pick. It portrayed the band as fighting to protect their culture against a oppressive government, right? So you'd think that this band would not be identifying and supporting a Cuban communist regime, performing for these Democratic Socialists and going, yeah, fuck the United States. Jerk-offs, you stood up to protect your language, right? Because the Gaelic language was banned in Ireland. So part of what they did was they went out there as this rap group. They rapped in Gaelic. They fought for their native language and won that battle, fighting for the culture and the freedom of your people against a government. The blind hypocrisy, the blind stupidity of going to Cuba, performing in a luxury hotel surrounded by armed guards, catered to by a brutal regime, and having zero self-awareness as to what you're standing for. Like I said, the absolute hypocrisy of this is mind-blowing. And I mean, mind-blowing. And these Irish fuckers, and I'm Irish, by the way, these Irish fuckers go out there and they'll tell you that, they're doing it for the people. That there's no hypocrisy there because they're fighting against the man. What is wrong with musicians? This is why I don't listen to any interviews with musicians without fail. Even the ones I like, I don't want to hear what they have to say because almost without fail, they're the stupidest people on the planet. They never have any idea what they're talking about. They're always a letdown. And now you can't enjoy their music because they've ruined it by opening up their mouths. And the same thing goes for Hollywood. Perfect segue, Brian. Thank you. I know. So let's segue into Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert, of course, has lost his show, and he did a huge masturbatory send-off, which even, I should point out, even Deadline Hollywood, which is one of the primary three trades, right? There's Variety, there's Hollywood Reporter, and there's Deadline. One of the three major trades in Hollywood. Even a writer at Deadline Hollywood, which depends on Hollywood insiders to read and give it its news, called out Stephen Colbert and said, this was the most masturbatory send-off in the history of television. Ridiculous, over the top, kept having guests come on to feed him. Of course, John Lithgow, who talk about ruining John Lithgow for me. Thanks for ruining your own reputation, John Lithgow, and your own legacy. Of course, John Lithgow is in the new Harry Potter series as Dumbledore, the one that they're ruining by race baiting, by race swapping, by completely undermining the characters that have been written in the books to satisfy diversity quotas and outraging everybody that's been a fan of these for decades. But John Lithgow, of course, is also out there, much like the completely disrespectful actors that were in Harry Potter previously, which, of course, Emma Watson has tried to walk her angle back now and try to apologize to J.K. Rowling. But John Lithgow now is also piling on J.K. Rowling and saying that she's transphobic, which is absolutely untrue. J.K. Rowling's not transphobic. J.K. Rowling simply says women need to have their own spaces and it has to be protected. A statement which I completely agree with, that biological women are biological women, and that's unchangeable through having a sex hormone therapy and your penis and vagina flip-flop. I agree completely. Any rational, sane person agrees with J.K. Rowling. But yet, John Lithgow's out there crapping on her as Dumbledore in the new HBO series, which is, by the way, dead on arrival. Dead on arrival. And the other thing with John Lithgow, sorry, I'm getting off a tangent here, just because I like I said, so many people have ruined themselves for so many of us by opening up their mouths and being so ignorant and so leftist bubbles, just retarded. He's also in a stage show which is all about Roald Dahl, the famous author of the BFG, of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, of countless other, really, James and the Giant Peach, beloved children's books that deliver so much to so many. He's in a play out there which is just about how Roald Dahl is anti-Semitic, which is basic, by the way, arguably true or untrue, depending on how you want to interpret certain things. But regardless, it's just another effort to destroy the legacy of a beloved author and beloved stories, right? Because now you're assassinating the stories by assassinating the man, which they tried to do to Dr. Seuss as well, painting him as as anti-Semitic or anti-whatever. Seems to be the modus operandi of Hollywood. In recent decades, it is to tear down. Oh dear, you've seen it happen with Star Wars. You're seeing it happen with now Lord of the Rings. Oh, good. My fucking computer is slowing down again for no goddamn reason. Wonderful. By the way, I have researched this, and there's just a problem with Mac computers, and no one seems to figure out how to fix it. I upgraded my iOS. I've tried turning off various programs. I've tried upgrading this and that. Doesn't seem to do anything. It's just a Mac problem, and there's nothing I can do about it without getting a new computer. Switch to a PC for these live streams. Man. So, getting back to Colbert. Has been confirmed to be on the writing team with his son, right? Which is absurd in its own right. Let me open up this. Since I'm already lagged to hell, I might as well open up this link and look at it. All right, so he's confirmed to be on this writing team with his son, as well as with, I guess, a quote-unquote veteran of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is some guy. Of course, now nothing's loading. I swear to God, this makes me so angry, and I apologize, guys. Tech issues, there's just nothing I can do about it, and it makes me so fucking pissed off. All right, so he's writing the script with his son, Peter McGee, and franchise veteran Philippa Boyens. Doesn't that sound promising? Philippa Boyens and his son, Peter McGee, which sounds like a made-up name. Did he adopt the kid and just give him the stupidest, most random name possible? P. Tier Griffin. So he's signed on, and the plot of this apparently takes place after another forthcoming script, which is about Gollum. I guess the hunt for Gollum, which is comedic in its own right because Andy Serkis, of course, plays Gollum. Andy Serkis is the guy that was Gollum. He was the guy famous for having all the little ping pong balls over his head in the days of visual effects where people weren't quite used to this type of thing. And he did a great job as Gollum. But of course, Andy Serkis is also a lunatic leftist. Andy Serkis is the guy who directed and I think co-wrote the absolute bomb that was Animal Farm, where they remade it into a socialist tale. Animal Farm, which is explicitly anti-socialist. They remade it to paint the socialists as the heroes and capitalism as the villain. So that's where Andy fucking Serkis falls in this whole equation. So that moron's going to be in the Hunt for Gollum. I'm sure he'll also appear in this newest Stephen Colbert penned edition. But this will be called The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past. That's the working title. Here's the synopsis. 14 years after the passing of Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin set out to retrace the first steps of their adventure. Meanwhile, Sam's daughter, Eleanor, of course, because it's got to be a girl boss movie, has discovered a long-buried secret and is determined to uncover why the War of the Ring was very nearly lost before it began. So there you have it. This will be a shitty girl boss movie written by shitty Stephen Colbert. And I wonder if they'll have a scene, instead of going to over the mountains of Mordor, will they go through the Valley of the Vax Dancers? Because that's where this fucking clown has, as far as his resting state, right? As I said, all these people are seeking to destroy the things that we love. This is not, by the way, out of the actual Lord of the Rings lore that people depend on and know and love. No, this is apparently scenes that were cut out of the original novels, chapters that were thrown away. And you know what? In my opinion, if a chapter is thrown away by the author, by J.R.R. Tolkien, they're thrown away for a reason, because he doesn't want them in there. But yet, these assholes find this. Of course, his family, I'm sure, say, oh, well, here, let's make ourselves a bunch more money. We'll mine these out. Asshole Stephen Colbert comes in. And how the fuck Stephen Colbert gets on this writing team, maybe he bought the rights. I have no clue how he possibly got this deal. But for him to get in there as possibly the most divisive figure in current political / entertainment climates is just so tone deafly, as I said, insularly retarded that I can't believe Hollywood hasn't woken up. And the fact that Warner Brothers, I guess, is behind this, Warner Brothers, who is now merged with Paramount, I thought Paramount had their heads on its shoulders. They finally decided to cancel Starfleet Academy. They're making a whole other season, I guess it's already made, of one of the wokest, crappiest, again, beloved fan favorite ruining shows, because people love Star Trek and Paramount has been slowly destroying it under Alex Kurtzman, making it this woke nonsense garbage. But you think that with the success of more down the middle, or even, may I say, right-leaning shows like Yellowstone and Landman, that they would have better heads on their shoulders and say, why the fuck would we have Stephen Colbert, who we just fired, taking part in this massive undertaking under our brand? Right off the bat, half the world, or at least half the Americans, are not going to watch this shit because he's involved with it. So why even start it? Just incredible. God, good. I'm lagging again as far as my video. Well, this is making me cut this show short because I just can't fucking take it. So let's just hit on a couple more things. Stephen Colbert, fuck yourself. Fuck you for even taking on this project. I do want to talk about this report that came out from something like, let's see, what's the name of the company? It was a new report came out. Great, now I can't find it. Well, fuck it. Basically, the Hollywood research, some Hollywood research group did a new study saying that the women-led, gender equality in Hollywood took a step back, and quote, this is not progress, because in 2025 there were less female-led, or I guess female 50% equal roles, directors, producers, whatever, in fucking Hollywood. Well, you know what? It actually is progress. Hollywood, keep checking boxes. How's that worked out for you? Right? Nobody's going to the movie theaters anymore. Nobody's watching the Oscars anymore because you keep rolling out horse shit nobody wants to watch and see, that's just pandering nonsense to your own echo chamber. And yet you roll out this crap study and saying this is not progress. No, it is progress. It is progress, actually. If we stop checking boxes and having diversity quotas and forcing, female girl bosses on everybody just to make sure that we have that balanced, quote unquote, balance. If you stop doing all that and actually focus on storytelling and writing, and Ryan Gosling, good on him for calling this out and saying, look, it's up to us to make movies people want to see and go to the theater for, as he has a movie right now. Was it like Hail Mary or something like that? Space movie that's doing gangbusters. It's doing great. And you have Vince Vaughn out there calling out the entertainment complex for shoveling the same shit down everybody's throats, including Kimmel and Colbert. This is progress. Getting away from everything has to be gender balanced and checkboxed is fucking progress. It's the best progress we could possibly have. It's the thing that's going to save Hollywood, you jagoffs. All right, last thing. Let's talk about the 82nd Airborne, and then I'm going to finish up this goddamn laggy feed. So the 82nd Airborne, paratroopers, famously was the precursor to the D-Day invasion in Normandy. Well, they are being deployed to the Middle East. Isn't that great? Precursor to a much larger invasionary force that's going to be positioned in the Middle East, that's going to be boots on the ground. Now, I told you this was going to happen. You know, I told you that there was already 50,000 troops deployed in the Middle East that were taking part in actions in Iran. I told you guys that this was going to be another quagmire. I told you it wasn't going to end here, and I told you there would. Here's your boots on the ground. Here's your $200 billion more requested. Here's your unpopular, every unbelievable. The fuck issues. All right, that's it. Show's over. I don't know what is happening here. I don't know if there's a StreamYard problem. I don't know if this is a Mac issue. I don't know. I'm just going to end it because if my microphone's cutting out on me, then what's the point? Talk to you later. Fuck this fucking computer. All right, bye-bye.